Hello, Mike.
Hi, Keith. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Mike. How are you?
Really well, man. It's nice to see you
Like,
finally and say hello. What's
it's so. How's
s-
your day so far, Mike?
the day is good. I taught my students at Immaculata today. I'm relaxed now, and I was just looking forward to meeting you and saying hello and thank you for all the opportunities you've given me,
Thank,
man.
thanks to you. You are an amazing person, Mike. It's really honor to work along with you, Mike.
No, it's my pleasure, man. Tell me, you're the head of the magazine now, right?
Yes, yes, I am.
Yeah, I mean, what a responsibility. How do you, and when when I look on Facebook, I see so many interviews and so many articles that you're doing. How do you manage to
Uh-huh.
balance all of that?
Oh man, that's crazy. I put a lot of work and I took a lot of time, like sleepless days, sleepless nights.
Hmm.
But it's all passion, Mike. That's what it started as a passion from childhood that I want to do something for music. So that's what
Hmm.
that goes
Yeah.
inside.
When you were a child, who was your favorite band? Like, let me pick an age. When you were 14, my favorite band was Kiss. Who was your favorite band when you were 14?
You will be laughing if you hear this. It was Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young.
No, that's awesome. I mean, when I was 14, my first concert was Elton John. When I was 14, I went with my mother and her best friend, Mrs. Weiss, and we went to the concert, and I was changed forever. I mean,
Oh,
that was Elton John's heyday. It was like 1975, and he was great. I like all kinds of music. I still remember I first got introduced to music when I was like 10, and we would take long trips from Pennsylvania
mhm.
to Massachusetts to visit the cousins, right?
Yeah.
And my mom had AM radio on, and I'll never forget, I heard Ramblin' Man by the Allman Brothers.
Oh,
That was the first song I fell in love with, and it made me feel so emotional that I didn't realize there could be a connection like that. And then ever since then, I've loved rock. Yeah, and that's why you run Metalheads Forever, man,
yeah.
because you just love rock. I mean, the new rock, the new rock is great. The rock from the early 2000s
Yeah.
was great. The 90s had great rock. The 80s had great rock. Um, I think the decade that gets overlooked because it was so album oriented
Yes.
was the 70s.
Absolutely.
There were so many bands that were in my opinion, they were playing heavy metal just with a different feel. I
Yes.
mean, yeah, I mean, you talk about Boston, Kansas, Styx, Foreigner. I mean, all of those bands, REO Speedwagon,
Oh yeah.
I mean, all of those bands were using a hard guitar and then mixing it. And then, I remember when Eddie Van Halen came out with Van Halen's Eruption, and I was in a cover band,
Yeah.
and my guitar, like back then, back in 1978, you didn't have the Jumbotron.
Oh yeah.
So if you went to a concert at like the Wachovia Center or the Spectrum with 20,000 people,
Mhm.
if you weren't in the first 50 rows, you couldn't see what the guy's doing. And I went to the I was there, dude. I saw when Black Sabbath made the huge mistake in 78 to let a new band from LA open for them. And I love Sabbath. I love Ozzy, man. The whole thing. I love Randy Rhoads. I like Zach Wild, the whole nine yards. But they were beat. Ozzy Osbourne was drunk. I mean, they were Van Halen blew them away. And I couldn't see what he was doing to make those bird noises. And we know it's tapping now, right? You do the
Yeah.
two-handed
Yeah.
in. my guitar player, I still remember this. I was in my first cover band and we were at a neighboring high school. So I was popular in the other high school, like a
Yeah.
movie, right?
Yeah.
And he played Eruption by Van Halen for me, and it was never the same. And then he goes, you know how he's doing that? And I was like, how?
Yeah.
And he put his pick in his mouth and he started doing this.
Oh.
And I was a metalhead forever.
Wow, that's a beautiful thing. My God.
Yeah, man. Hey, Keith, tell me, who is your favorite 4 or 5 bands?
Oh, I could. That's a long list. I have this band called Wishbone Ash from UK. I hope you know them. long,
Yes.
long time favorite band, and as a child, as a teenager, I was so much in love with Metallica,
Of course.
and I had another big band. I would say is your competitor, Cinderella.
I love Cinderella, man. Yo, I want to tell you, I'm really sad, kind of, because
Yes, no,
Jeff LeBar just
yes,
passed.
yes,
I played an Upper Darby Battle of the Bands against Jeff LeBar's band. I forget what their name was, but he wore a kimono and his solo was the William Tell Overture, you know, the Lone
yeah,
Ranger song.
yeah.
And they won, we didn't. And I saw him and I thought, you are special. And then one day when we were practicing, like a year later, I
Mhm.
was with my band and there was like somebody at the door. So we stopped practice and my guitar player went to the door. It was Jeff LeBar. It was a little before Cinderella.
Mhm.
And he wanted to buy Louis' amp because Louis, he was an electrician and he had remade the head of his Marshall amplifier. Jeff LeBar wanted to buy it. Like, I knew the guy. He was talented, yo. I want to tell you something. My wife doesn't really like heavy metal. She's more of an alternative rock person,
Yeah, yeah,
but we agree. Cinderella is the fucking best. I
yeah.
mean, I love them, man. Love that. And yo, when I was playing in my club band in the 80s, I played the same clubs that they did. I wasn't as good,
Mhm.
but I played the same clubs, the Empire Rock Club in Northeast Philadelphia and the Galaxy over in Jersey. And I want to tell you, that band was special, dude. They were good.
They are so good. Although, even though they didn't make much of an albums out back in the days, but still, those 4 or 5 albums they did was totally massive. Each album is totally perfectly done. I love each and every album of them. It's totally amazing to have them. Yeah.
No, and you know what? 5 is kind of a magic number. Uh, a lot of critics say that David Bowie, if you look at the whole career, there's a lot of unknown stuff on the edges, but
Yeah.
he had 5 albums, starting with Ziggy. And
Yeah.
I don't remember the one that ended it. I mean, he invented new wave to me.
True.
I mean, he was just phenomenal. He could change what he was doing stylistically, and just be a little bit ahead of the curve. And it
Yeah.
was, and now of course my favorite album by Bowie is Ziggy Stardust, man.
That's a beautiful one. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, when I was in college, I didn't know anybody. I was scared. I was 18. I went to Temple University and I met a guy in one of my classes named Tim. And I was a big Rush fan. Rush was my band, and he was a big Bowie fan. And I spent the entire first semester of my college at Temple University. Every night we would, you're going to think this is crazy. We would split a bottle of scotch, drink the whole thing, listen to Rush, Hemispheres, Farewell to Kings, you know, the whole catalog up until then. And then he made me listen to Bowie. And I got a love for David Bowie because he's a poet, yo.
Yeah.
He's a poet. And even though I drank too much and I went out in the hallway and puked in the fucking trash can in the hall, it didn't matter because I was with my friend listening to the music that we loved. Music is the binding tie. You know, look, you own a magazine, right?
Yeah.
I'm a college professor, but we have in common a love for music.
True.
And I think that breaks all kinds of barriers. The friendships that I have with people through art are the ones that I really treasure. You know what I mean? Yeah,
Yeah.
I know you're recording this. I want to say this on your recording. You have allowed me to find any new talent or old talent or whatever, and given me the freedom to write a column. I cannot thank you enough. I'm indebted to you for life. You've given me a platform where I can talk about music. And that's a dream for me, Keith. When I was look, I knew when I was 27 years old that this was going to age, and I wasn't going to be a rock star, but I was going to find a way to keep it real for me. And
Yeah.
you've given me that conduit, and I want to thank you, man. Thank you.
It's my pleasure, Mike. It's my pleasure to have you. It's really a pleasure and honor, I would say. You are a totally amazing writer, and you're so great, to be honest with you. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Yeah. It's funny. I've been thinking lately about what means more to me. Writing my horror books or teaching college. And it used to be when I was in my 30s and I was just starting to write, I was hoping that it would take me away from all this and I'd be rich like Stephen King.
Yeah.
And I'd have a writing room where out the back window I can see the deer, you know what I mean, and drink scotch or whatever. And it turned out that I love teaching students about writing the expository stuff.
Yeah.
Because, hey, Keith, I teach my students how to write an analysis of something we read, and then I show them a copy of what I do for Metalheads Forever. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
You find the little parts that you love,
Yeah.
and you write about why they're special, and you let me do that for free. You know, I don't have to pay anything. I get to do that and show it to my students. I mean, you've made me a legend. You know, I want to tell you something. Talking about music, it's really strange the way metal is going lately. I like it. Metal is sort of going away from screamo. And for me, the way to measure the middle of the road where everything is, most of the traffic is on Sirius Radio Channel 37. That's the new rock. And I noticed that they're getting off of the screamo a little bit. And a lot of the stuff has a harder guitar than I've heard.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable drums, but it sounds like they're going for a pop sound. And you know what I mean? Like a lot of it sounds very similar to music with lighter guitar on other stations. And I'm going to tell you right now, the number one band right now to look at is The Warning. And look, I don't know them. Keith, whenever I write an article for you, I always have only one demand of the artist when I contact them. Mm-hmm. You know, I say, look, I write for Metalheads Forever. I do it out of love. I want to write an article about you. But I want you to email with me so it doesn't look like I just got shit off the internet. Yeah. And I've only had two artists how many articles have I written for Metalheads Forever? About 150. It's a lot. I've been doing it since 2017.
Yes.
I've only had 2 artists not get back to me, but I still wrote the article anyway. And one of them was Nita Strauss. And she did she's the 3rd guitar player for Alice Cooper, of course.
Yeah.
And I think she was in Iron Maiden's, the tribute band for Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
And look, she's way up on the totem pole. I didn't expect her to get back to me. She didn't. And I still wrote my article and everything was cool. I saw her after I wrote her article. I saw her. It's now been about 2 or 3 years. It was just before COVID.
Yeah.
And I went to a club, the Ardmore. I forget what it's called. It used to be called the 23 East. It's in the main line, 5 minutes from my house. And she warmed up with her solo band for Paul Gilbert, who is one of my favorites, man.
Oh, yeah.
And she was great. And I went up to her to take a selfie and I said, "Thanks for letting me do the article on you." And she looked at me like, oh, she realized she didn't get back to me. And I was just like, hey, it's cool. You know what I mean? The only other band that didn't get back to me was The Warning. And just for anybody who's watching this that happens not to have heard of them, I'm telling you right now, I like them as much as I like Hailstorm. I like female fronted bands, and they could have been millionaires in the 70s. They're 3 sisters from Mexico. The bass player is only like 17 years old right now. Her name's Alejandra. The drummer, they call her Pau. Her name is Paulina. Villarreal is their last name. And the lead guitar player, rhythm guitar player, they're a trio. Her name is Daniela. And I want to tell you something. They're the best band I've seen in fucking years. I haven't gotten this excited about a band since I saw Velvet Revolver.
Oh yeah.
And that's an all-star band. I mean, you have the guy from the Stone Temple Pilots, you have Slash, you have the other guys from Guns N' Roses. I want to tell you something. These girls can play, yo. Do me a favor, Keith. When we're done, go on YouTube and just watch one song for me. Just one. Yeah. Watch the song called Evolve. And it's the official studio version. And the picture is like all a red background with an eye, like an eyeball.
Yeah, yeah.
Watch that video and you tell me that the drummer isn't one of the best personalities that you've seen in a long time. No screamo. It's all melodic, great harmonies, and a fucking kick-ass edge that just puts you on the edge of your seat, man. And you know what? They didn't get back to me. I don't care. You know what? I'm going to find a mailing address for them and I'm going to send them a copy of my book. Maybe they'll pick it up. Maybe not. Hey, yo, they're on tour. You know, they probably have downtime. They're waiting at the airport or whatever. I'm going to send them my book, man. A dream of mine would be to see them live and to be able to say, you know what? You guys are great. Congratulations. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
I want to tell you something. I haven't had a chance to meet many bands, but ever since I started writing for you, a couple of opportunities came up. And I'm going to tell you the band that I love that I met because you let me do articles about them. And that's the Eclipse Records band, Sifting.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, they're progressive metal. They've put out 3 albums, I think. I think Infinite Loop is the one they put out like a year or 2 ago. But I went and I went to see them in, I think it was 2018. And I wrote an article for you and I wrote an article for not Metalheads, Heavy Music Headquarters. And the president of Eclipse Records left 2 tickets at the door for me and a guest. And I've never had that before. I was like, whoa, man, I'm a guest. And I took my son, and he was in college at the time. And I go in, and waiting at the merch table is Winston Jarkin, and he's their bass player. He's got the purple hair. And he said, "Hi, how you doing?" And I was like, wow, he recognized me. And so he must have seen a picture. And we went outside. It was raining out. And we went outside, and he gave me an interview. And I blew all of my questions on him because I thought that was the interview, right? And it was cool. He told me that he used to be a guitar player. He entered the band. The only ticket in was to be the bass player. And he plays a lot of leads on his bass. He doesn't play roots. So I go in and I watch the concert, and they were great. They warmed up for Felix Martin. He does the two-handed Independence thing, like Buckethead on steroids. And then Sons of Apollo played, and there was a dude from Guns N' Roses in there. There were Dream Theater guys in there, and they were great. But I thought Sifting stole the show, and it's so funny that they're the opening band on a triple ticket. And when they were clearing the instruments away, it looked like roadies because they were wearing sweatshirts and they had the hoods real tight. It was the band. They do their own roadieing. I mean, that's the way metal is, man. It's all a family. Everybody does everybody's job. So then this is one of my favorite stories, Keith. I got to tell you. After we were done and I had drank a few, okay, and dude, I was in the equivalent of the second row. They played at the TLA Theater, the Theater of the Living Arts in Philadelphia. And it's a dance floor that fits about 3,000 people. I was in the equivalent of the second row. I felt like a kid. Eduardo handed me a guitar pick. I was like, yeah, I mean, they were just great. They looked at me, they pointed at me. It was just, what a fucking night. So I'm leaving, with my son, and they're all the whole band is waiting at the merch table. And I panicked because I gave all my questions already. I didn't have anything to ask. And they're like, "We're here for your interview, man." And I was like, oh, fuck. Like, what do I do? So they go, "Let's not do it here. It's a little noisy. Let's go across the street." So I got my son with me. He's in college and he's looking like, whoa, my dad knows people. We go to a store across the street under an overhang, and they're closed, but it's raining out and we're under the overhang. And all I could think of was to tell them how great they are. I didn't have any questions left. And I talked about a song that was their hit off their second album called Not From Here. And I asked Eduardo, the songwriter, where do you come up with your hooks? Because you do these weird, like, da, 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 like it's a weird note that you hit. And he goes, "Sing it for me." And I go, okay. And I sang him what I just sang you. And the whole band came in harmony. Did you hear what I just fucking said? The band came in harmony with me under an overhang in the rain, like I'm fucking Freddie Mercury, man. Like in the Queen movie when he sings with the band.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, they made me feel like a boss. They made me feel like a boss in front of my kid, and I'll never forget that, man. So like, if you ask me who my favorite modern band is besides The Warning, I got to go with Sifting, man. They're great. And you're very patient with me, Keith, with all the changes. With all the changes that I want in my articles. And you've been really cool about, I've written about 2 or 3 articles on Sifting, and wow, that's great, man. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Mike. No problem at all. No problem.
Can I ask you a dumb question?
Oh, go ahead, Mike. Anything.
Metalheads Forever is a huge magazine with a big following. How many people click into Metalheads Forever? Do you have a number?
There are usually not numbers. It depends on the bands that we are posting. It depends from 3,000, 10,000, 15,000. Sometimes even 50,000 people used to see an article. Depends on the bands. Sometimes you have less views. Sometimes you have more views. So it's not a not a common thing that everybody reads everything. So depends what they like, they go and just check it out. That's how it is.
Yeah, you have a big readership, man. I remember for a short while I was a radio DJ. Did I ever tell you about that?
No, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, it was one of these things where I was talking about one of my books, my third novel, Phantom Effect, and I was on Twitter, and there was a metal DJ named Wicked Liss. She's a nurse now. She got out of it, but she was a really good DJ, man. And I said, "Do you want to interview me for your show?" And she wrote back and she said, "Well, tell me about yourself." And I sent her a copy of my book. She read it. She stayed up all night and read it in like a day. And then she emails me back and she has avatars representing me and her. And she says that I'm going to co-host her show for her, with her.
Wow.
And I co-hosted a radio show for about 4 months. And the way she did it, she had us go on Skype and she would talk about a band and then I would talk with her, and she recorded the whole thing and just edited out all the bullshit. It was really fun. You know what I mean? So, I mean, rock and roll has given me so many opportunities to do things that I never thought I'd be capable of. But isn't that what heavy metal is? Heavy metal gives power to the guy or gal who's in the Votech classes in high school, and they sit in the corner and they have anxiety issues and they never raise their hand. School doesn't work for them, but they can do this. And for me, heavy metal is always about the little guy, man. It's about the one in the shadows. And we're a family, man. I want to tell you something. One of the bands that I wrote a review on as a result of that DJ, she's from Chicago originally, and there's a band called Chains Over Razors. And I wrote in 2017, I think, my best article. And, you know, they loved it. I became friends with them in the whole 9 yards. But within 3 weeks, and I'm telling your audience this right now, 30,000 views.
Wow.
Dude, I've never had 30,000 people even slow down to spit on me. Okay. I've never had 30,000 people read my shit. My best readership is from your magazine, hands down. You know what I mean? Like, I think my third novel, Phantom Effect, I think it sold 8,000 copies, and that's good. I mean, I only knew 50 of those people, right? I don't know how much my new stuff is selling, but it's going to be nothing compared to Metalheads Forever, you know? So what are you thinking, man? You let me talk all the time.
Wonderful, Mike. Wonderful, Mike. So, Mike, the Sculptor, talking about the Sculptor that is going to be released in 2022. So, would you like to tell a bit about the writing process and a little bit of an idea for the people who are watching this interview to know the storyline of the Sculptor? Would you like to share something?
Sure, of course. The Sculptor was based on a short story that I wrote in 2011. And it's a serial killer piece. And the killer, excuse me, the killer is 30 years ahead of everyone on the planet in terms of technology. And he likes to toy with people. He's so good with tech that you can think you're having a Zoom with him, but he's pre-recorded it because he knows your psychology. And it's his MO is that he kidnaps college co-eds, disfigures them, and puts them up on a pole like a scarecrow. And the Sculptor takes place when he goes into his next level, when he's focusing on a couple of townspeople, running their psychology and making them do crazy things. I think it's the best novel that I've ever written. and it's going to be out on January 25th, 2022. Yeah, and I'm really excited about it. And guess what? I wrote that. Look, in publishing, you write something and a couple of years go by.
Yeah.
You know, there's a waiting period. I finished The Sculptor in 2019, and I started writing the sequel a year ago tomorrow. And it's almost done. I wanted to get it done exactly a year from the time I started it. But the sequel has about 10,000 words to go. I'm at the climactic scene where my heroes meet the sculptor, who lived from the first episode, and they're going to have their final showdown. But thank you for asking me about the Sculptor, man. The Sculptor was the first mystery that I tried to do.
Mm-hmm.
And horror is a little bit different than mystery. I've written a lot of horror stories. I've published about 50 short stories. I've published 2 collections of short stories professionally, and I've published 3 novels. The Sculptor is the 4th. And the thing about writing these things is that I discovery write. So what that means is I don't know what the ending is when I start. So when you do a novel, it's entirely possible that I'll get 6 months in and realize it's not going to work. And thank goodness the Sculptor worked. It's funny, Keith, I had just started probably one of the 2 or 3 best jobs that I've ever done. And that was working for the University of Delaware. So I was in a great point in my life, and I write this thing. And the writing of it was really excellent because I ran a lot of the scenarios by my students, and they gave me answers to some of the questions I had, and I kind of grew with them as I wrote it. And thank God that I figured out what the ending was going to be when I did at about the halfway point. But mystery is different. Horror has a very basic plot line. Mystery, man, you have to be up on your timelines of what everybody knows. I had a point when I was writing The Sculptor. You can't really see my room. This is my office. I had a point where my lead 3 characters, I had to storyboard the whole room to figure out who knew what and who assumed what and who was lied to about what at what point in the timeline. And it was like, look, dude, Keith, I'm really good at English, and I'm learning disabled in math, and mystery is like fucking math, because you have to figure out what time it is when they figure whatever out. And I got out of it alive, man, and I got a publishing deal, and I'm really thankful that I did. But I want to tell you, I'll send you a copy, as soon as the book is out. I'm proud of it. The book came out really good. There isn't a moment where you can put it down. When you start that book, Keith, you're going to read all night. Guaranteed, just like Wicked List did. It's one of those where, look, if you're looking, I look like a normal guy, but I'm a sick fuck. I'm telling you right now. Yo, I once had a high school student tell me, Aronovitz, she said, and this was at the Mathematics, Civics, and Sciences Charter School in downtown Philadelphia. And this student, her name is Shania, she has 2 master's degrees now, but back then she was a senior. And I was talking about one of my stories, and she said, Aronovitz, she goes, the depth that you go to figure out the dark shit that you talk about, nobody wants to go there. She goes, lighten it up a little bit. And I try. I really do. But when I write something, I want you to put the book down and go, what the fuck? I want you to say to yourself, is Aronovitz really that demented that he came up with that? And that's what I want, man. And to tell you the truth, I think that's totally metal. When Judas Priest came out with an album cover with a razor blade and fingers going over it like this, they were pushing the envelope. When Alice Cooper did his magic show where he cuts his own fucking head off with a guillotine, he was taking a risk. And that's horror, yo. It's the same thing. When Black Sabbath came out in 1970 with their landmark album, Black Sabbath, self-titled, you look at the cover and you're scared. Nobody ever done that before. And that's why I love metalheads forever. And that's why I love heavy metal, because they push the envelope. And I think that, and I want to know your opinion on this. I think metal and horror a lot of times are linked. I think it's the same rush. It's the same imagery. It's the same thing. And just because I listen to heavy metal and I like Black Sabbath doesn't mean that I'm a serial killer. It just means that I see the cloud differently and I find beauty in darkness. How is it for you? Like, why do you like metal?
It's all about darkness, the music, the pleasure it uses, and it's a healer, to be honest with you. Music, the metal, it's a healer. There is no better healer than heavy metal. That's what goes through my mind.
Yeah, you know what's interesting about that, Keith? I don't know how old you are. You look like you're 25 to me.
You're kidding.
I mean, I turned 60 in September. And I asked my son, I go, don't I look good for my age? I'm 60. And he goes, more you look like shitty for 35. And I thought that was funny. But one of the things that I noticed about a lot of my students, they're way more willing to talk about their anxiety than my generation. I mean, I had students today who we were in a discussion about The Ones Who Walk Away from Momelis, which is a short story by Ursula Le Guin. Mm-hmm. And the conversation somehow worked to the student's psyche. And I don't think they have any more anxiety than I ever did. I'm the most anxious fucking person you'll ever meet. I mean, I wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning and think about shit people did to me 30 years ago and I get pissed off. So, I mean, I have anxiety, but I think it's good that nowadays they're more willing to talk about it. You know what I mean? And I mean, the article you just put up for me, Grace, who's the artist, her stuff is sick, yo. And it's sick in that way, and it's sick in a great way. I mean, to me, that's self-healing. You know, she's talking about the monsters in her head. And when you talk about it and sing about it and scream about it and Ronnie James Dio about it, I mean, you feel better. I always felt that hard music expressed something in my soul that I wasn't quite able to express myself. And it's enlightening, man. It's beautiful. Who's your favorite band, Keith? I asked you that already, but who's number one?
Number one is a hard thing. There's a lot of bands, to be honest with you. I love this Irish band called the Cranberries. Probably you might have heard of them.
And I have to let it linger.
Yeah, it sounds sick, but I don't know. They're not great songwriters, but somehow the music touches, it heals. You know, the music has something. Dolores Riordan's voice has something much deeper than the songwriting. But to be on you leave the songwriting apart, and if you listen to their songs, the way they progress the music and deliver it is totally awesome. I love that band since they started the band back in 1992. I was listening to them until her departure. I mean, she passed away a couple of years back since the time I was listening to
Oh,
it.
I didn't realize that, man. She passed away.
Yeah, it's a
She had,
couple.
wow, she had a golden voice, man.
Yes, yeah,
Golden voice. I mean, and that reminds me, like, a lot of metalheads that I know will secretly admit to you, and a lot of them,
yeah.
that the Bee Gees are one of their favorite bands.
For me, they are from childhood.
Yeah, and from childhood for me too. And I think there's something pure about metalheads
Yeah,
because they like their music played live. They like the tracks to be actually played. They don't go for machines as much. And we love harmonies, man. I mean, if you ask me what my favorite part of any band is, it's the background vocals.
yeah.
I mean, my favorite all-time band, if you ask me, is Queen. Because not only is Freddie Mercury a legend, but all of the band members sing.
Yeah.
There isn't a weak link. They were way ahead of their time. And you could listen to the backing vocals, and that could be a lead vocal that's all by itself. They're almost like a barbershop quartet where the vocals are that important. And that's why I love them. That I'm telling you right now, David Lee Roth has a shitty voice, but the background vocals in early Van Halen can't be beat.
Yeah.
It's right there. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I like the old band Foreigner, because
Oh,
their background vocals were really special. Do you know what So I know exactly what you're talking about with the Cranberries. I can feel it. I know what you're saying.
but if you ask me the most favorite band of all time, there is this one band called Blue Oyster Cult. I love them.
Yo, my guitar player who's passed away now, his name's Louis Pastalone. His favorite freaking band was Blue Oyster Cult. Do you know, in my first band from Upper Darby,
Yeah,
well, you don't know my area, but I went to Marple Newtown over in Broomall. And then Upper Darby is closer to the city. It's right on the edge of the city. And that's where my band was. And my first gig we opened with We Will Rock You in 1977 when it came out.
wow.
And so that was cool. And one of our songs was Godzilla. Do you like that song?
Oh yeah, it's amazing, amazing song.
Yeah, and I still remember singing that and everybody going like this. Oh no, they say he's got to go, 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 Godzilla. Yeah, man. Hey,
Amazing, amazing.
Buck Dharma is the name of a guitar player who rarely gets mentioned. And I don't know why. He was really good, man.
Yes.
Did you ever see them live?
Oh, they never came to India. I have never got the opportunity to see them live.
I saw them once. I have to admit to you, I was in high school and I don't remember much of it because, I was smoking and drinking the whole 9 yards. But I do remember that during Godzilla, the drummer put on like a Godzilla head. It was
Yeah.
really cool. One thing I do remember also, though, that dude can play.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he really can play. He was really good live. He was the type of live performer that didn't do it exactly like the album, and he actually jammed a little bit. I mean, look, most guitar players don't jam. Let's admit that right now. Um, I can name two where they jammed and we got it on tape. Led Zeppelin
Yeah.
in the early days. Jimmy Page would try something a little beyond his talent and John Bonham would get him out of it, right? Thundering with the drums.
Yeah.
And the other band that improv'd a lot, and I have to give them credit, but I don't like them, is the Grateful Dead. I mean, they lived by doing that, but they're just not my style. They were just a little too soft for me.
Yeah. I know.
A little too wandering off into the margins, But yo, man, the best concert I ever saw was Rush in 1978. They had just released Hemispheres. And did you ever see a concert where the warm-up band is a mismatch with the headliner? The warm-up band in Philadelphia, which back then was the rock and roll fucking capital of the world, at the Spectrum in front of 20,000 people. We're there to see Rush play Hemispheres. And the opening band was Blondie. Okay? Call me! Right? They got booed the fuck off the stage and gave us the finger, and it was fucking great. I was like, right back to you, man. And then I got to tell you, Rush came out, and they're the most proficient band I've ever seen live.
They are amazing.
They just had everything, man. Like, I'm into mixed time signatures, and you know what? I got to throw in a little thing for the warning, man. In the song I told you to watch, Evolve.
Yeah.
One of their transitions and also their outro, it goes from regular 4/4 to 7/8 time. See if you can pick it up, man. And they're right on it. The riff that the bass and guitar player are doing are right on the money. And I love 7/8 time and 4/5 time and all that crazy shit.
Yeah.
I mean, wow. Oh, you know what? As I'm thinking about it, if you can, email me a mailing address, like if you have a P.O. box or something, or even your house or whatever. I want to send you a copy of the book that just came out.
All right.
Dancing with Tombstones, because because that one is it okay if I talk about it for a minute?
Yeah, surely, go ahead. It was one of my questions, actually.
Dancing with Tombstones is important to me in a different way than the Sculptor. I'm a better short story writer than I am a novelist. And the Sculptor's a good novel. Don't think I'm saying that it's bad. But how long can you keep the hallway fucking scary? Short fiction was made for horror writers.
Yeah.
And when the pandemic hit, and I was depressed, like everybody was, and I was cooped up in my office, and I decided, like, I don't like fucking jigsaw puzzles, and I can't go downstairs and watch TV and eat bonbons all day. It's just not me. I'm a worker bee. I got to be doing something. And I thought, what if I got together the best of my old short stories? And some of them I was reading for the first time in 20 years. Some of them were as recent as 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And I was surprised when it took me a while to get all the files together, because some of them I didn't even have a copy of anymore. And I had to ask the publisher of a book that went out of print to send me the file. And there were some that I thought were good and I couldn't use them. They just weren't good enough. And then there were the ones that were special, and there were 17 of them. And it's not short. I mean, in double space 12-point font, in the end, it was 525 pages. One of the stories I chose to do was a 100-page novella in itself called Toll Booth. But what was interesting is I rewrote every one of them. It's every writer's dream, Keith, because I grow as a person. I'm a better writer now than I was when I was 30. But the same issues, I'm the same person, so the same issues would be a blockade. I solved every one of them. And all of the stories were published before, so they were okay already. But I made them new. I even put COVID in some of them, right? So it would be relevant. And I came up with what I think is the best book I've written. And it's called Dancing with Tombstones. Now, hold on. You can see it in the background. It's right above my, wait.
Yeah.
It's right.
I can see that. Yeah.
There. I'm going to go get it. Hold on. Now, before I flash the cover and tell you the story, because you're going to love this. The publisher that published this, they're called Cemetery Dance. Now I have to explain what the horror market is. The big five and their imprints are like Bantam Doubleday and Penguin, and their imprints are Viking and Dover. I do not publish with them, but I publish with mid-rangers who they're just like heavy metal indie labels like Eclipse Records, who are legitimate, but they're independent. Cemetery Dance is of the biggest of the horror specialty presses. The owner of Cemetery Dance, his name is Richard Chismar, just co-wrote a book with Stephen King. Stephen King is going to read this book. They send like a box of the books up to him every year. He works with Cemetery Dance. So let me put this up here. Hopefully I have it right. That's my collection by Cemetery Dance, Dancing with Tombstones. And the little blurb here is written by John Shirley, who I was in an anthology with him a couple of years ago, and he did me a favor. He co-wrote the movie The Crow, so that's on here. And just to show it again, look at the clown on the cover. Okay, does he look familiar to you? He's me, yo. Now, I got to tell you the story of how that happened, okay? I have 5,000 people on my Facebook, and I only know fucking 30 of them. I mean, I just did it to up the number. Selling stuff off Facebook, other people are good at that. I'm not. But you know what, Keith? I try not to post too much because I don't want to fight with people about dumb shit. You know, I don't want to put up like I hate Trump or I hate Biden. You know, all that stuff. I don't care about that. So one of my friends named Vicky Flar is an artist, and she put up like some pictures. So I shared one of the pictures and she thanked me. And I said to her, I have a column that I write for Metalheads Forever called Goblet of Shock. And I'd like to do an article about you. It's a way to put your buy links up there. It's a way for me to put my buy links. And her answer, she's a little bit above me, I guess. And she said, that's cute. She said, but she says, there's a horror artist that you would be interested in. Her name is Lynn Hansen. So I looked just out of the blue, and she was a friend already, because the way I got all my friends is I went into horror groups and I would friend as many people as I could before they put me in Facebook jail. And then I would go back the next day and do it again. She was already a friend. I didn't even know it. So we're talking, and she was really particular. Do you remember she switched out a couple of pictures because they weren't high resolution enough?
Yeah,
she was very particular about what her article had to look like. So we're mostly through the process. We're about to publish her article. And she writes me an email and she goes, Mike, we already know each other. And I said, how? And she says, I did the cover art for the electronic version by Cemetery Dance of your first novel, Alice Walks. And I was like, I fucking love that picture. Yo, that's great. And she goes, I have more news for you. She goes, I'm the artist for your book coming out called Dancing with Tombstones. And she says, do you know what you want on the cover? And my contact there, his name is Norman Prentice. He had asked me months ago, what do you want on the cover? And I said, I don't know. It's 17 different stories. What do I put on it? And he said, how about if we do a broken ballerina doll in front of a broken music box in front of a tombstone? And I said, great. And I told Lynn that. And she did this. She put me on the cover. All right. And like I'm dancing with the Tombstones. That's my likeness. That's me, man. And I'm told that the reason why she did it, one of my stories in here is called The Exterminator. It's my only scary clown story, and she liked it. So she put me on the cover. Now, these were my thoughts when I saw this cover, okay? The first thing I thought was, yeah, right?
Yeah.
The second thing I thought was, I'm a fucking clown. And I was like kind of bummed out. I'm like, whoa. And then I thought, well, fuck it. It's horror. If you're the scary clown, you're the fucking man.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like it. I like it. And for this recording, I'll send you the link to pre-order the Sculptor. Can you hook that up on this recording so people can see it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I'll send you both links. And actually, you want to hear something cool? For viewers who haven't seen it, in my column that I do for Keith called Goblet of Shock, the last article I did was on a student of mine who paints like self-harming, crazy, violent, and beautiful like paintings.
Yeah.
And the last person that just read this was her. I gave her a copy of this, and she said she really enjoyed it. I think I've found a kindred spirit there. So that's cool, man. Keith, thanks for letting me talk about my books, man.
Oh, it's my pleasure. That's what we are here for, Mike. And
Hey,
talking about Dancing with Tombstones, like I was expecting the Sculptor to come out in September, and all of a sudden, Dancing with Tombstones came. I was like, what this guy is doing? I was expecting something like that. How did this all happen, Mike?
Yeah. How do I explain? The Sculptor was supposed to come out earlier. I landed the deal for the Sculptor earlier, and I convinced them to hold off and put the Sculptor out at the same time Dancing with Tombstones came out. But they switched editors at Nightshade Skyhorse, and then it got delayed, and it got delayed again, and it got delayed again. I do promise you, before they print it, they send me what's called a galley.
Yeah.
And I look at it in the print that they're going to do it on the page. And you can find stuff because you get used to seeing it on your own computer. And I sent it back to them with like 40 changes that I wanted them to do. And this is after the editors changed. And then they sent it back. And I just sent back the final galley like a week ago. Okay. So it's going to be delayed. I'm sorry about that, man. It's better to have it out right. You know what I mean? Yeah. Dancing with Tombstones, you have to understand this one, I went through only one galley and I was done. Because you have to understand, I wrote some of these 30 years ago. So there weren't as many typos. There weren't as many little things that I wanted to change. And that's the reason for the separation. I'm sorry about that, Keith, man. I'm telling you, though, it's going to be worth it. Yo, you don't have to buy anything. I'll get you a copy of each. Just send me your address.
Surely I will do that, Mike. And Mike, you have been writing novels for quite a while. You have started with a lot of novels, The Phantom Effect, Alice Walks, and there's a lot more that you have written. So when did this writing thing actually got inside of you?
Oh, wow. I started writing when I was in college as an undergraduate in the 80s, because I had friends and everything, but I had a lot of time where I was alone. And I was into music, and, I wanted to do that. But I always liked the idea that I can control something that's all mine. I don't have to cooperate with a guitar player or a drummer or whatever. And I did a little writing on and off all through the 80s. In the early 90s, when I realized I wasn't going to make it as a musician, And I shouldn't, because I don't have a good enough voice. I'm a good rehearsal manager. I'm really good at hunting down the thing that sucks and killing it, getting a band ready to play live. But I wasn't a good enough singer to make it. And I had to face up to that, because people that sing the music I like can sing, You can't fake it. The studio don't make you sound good. The studio just makes a good singer sound better. And it was 1992. And I was in a band with some of my old band members. I was already married. I'm in my 30s. And we were playing out in clubs. I was the drummer of that band. We called ourselves Life Sentence. I was the drummer, and I converted it to a stand-up set. So I had the hi-hats over here so I could play them open, and I put the drums up on boxes. And I'm just playing the same beat over and over again, but it looks like I'm doing a lot because I'm singing with a gooseneck mic. And when that band was ready to break up, and we played a couple of clubs, that was a fun band. I literally told my band members, I think I'm going to write horror because I love Stephen King, and it's something I can do into my old age. And ever since then, I've never looked back. And I don't know why. I think the reason I write horror is that I don't like reading. I hate to admit that. I'm a college professor of literature, and I've read a lot of books, but I don't like reading. I like writing, though. And excuse me, it was something that I just decided I was going to develop. And I didn't have my first real publication. I published some short stories back in the 90s, but in 2007, I'm going to tell you the story of how I got published. I had only published in small little horror magazines. And in 2007, one of my high school students gave me a Borders book card. Mm-hmm. And if you remember Borders, they had the coffee shop up there. It was a bookstore. And I went and I bought a book called 17th Century Ghosts. And that was cool. I didn't really like the book that much, but the guy who wrote the introduction, his name was S.T. Joshi. He's from somewhere in India. I'm not sure where. I think it's Bombay. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know who he was or how he was significant or whatever, but I thought he must know people. I didn't know. How am I going to get published? So I found his email. I was lucky. I found his email, and he was nice enough to email me back. And I said, could I send you 4 of my horror stories? And he said, sure. So I sent them to him. And a couple of days later, he gets back to me and he says, Mike, you're talented, but you overwrite. These are too thick. And thank you for showing them to me. And I thought, that's really cool. I wasn't hurt. I was like, that's cool. 2 days later, he emails me again and says, I can't get your fiction out of my head. He goes, shorten these and then write 40,000 more words, and I'll put a book out with your stories in it. So I took it seriously, and I rewrote some stories and I put a book together. And it turns out that S.T. Joshi, you can look him up, you can Google him. Mm-hmm. He's H.P. Lovecraft's #1 biographer in the world. Wow. Yeah. and so he's this big academic. And if you go to the horror conventions, he's like a rock star. And he's been my mentor ever since. I've never had an agent. I've never been able to see eye to eye with an agent. And ST has shepherded many of my works into the publishing thing. And so that's where it started, man.
Amazing, amazing. So what gave you the inspiration to start writing the horror novels?
Mm-hmm. Stephen King. Again, I mean, I read a little bit when I was younger. I was a big fan of Lord of the Rings. I've read the trilogy and The Hobbit maybe 40 times. Oh. You know, I mean, I've read them over and over. I mean, I liked Robin Hood. I liked the Hardy Boys mysteries.
Yeah.
but I was never really an avid reader. And after college, it wasn't until the 80s that I started reading Stephen King's work from the 70s. And he can get to the kernel of a character so fast. And I related to him. He talks about the regular guy, which is totally metal to me, you know, and I've never read anything I don't like by him. I have problems with the book It, which I'm not going to go into. I have problems with some of his longer versions that he released. Like The Stand originally was 800 pages, my favorite book. And he released a 1,500-page version. You have to understand, Stephen King at Bantam Doubleday or Scribner has editors who do nothing but removal. So it's a double benefit. They take away all the bullshit, and his scenes seem to jump at you, and it's because of the editing. But he was really the reason. Because, Keith, I don't like to read shit I don't want to read. I get bored. My eyes get heavy. So to interest me, you know, if you say, I saw her across a crowded room at the prom, I'm falling asleep, yo. But if you say there's a ghoul waiting in the closet by the punch that's spiked, now I'm interested, man. And look, I'm not a funny guy, at least in my writing. You know, I don't write romance. I'm not going to write the all-American novel. I'm a rebel, dude. I've been a heavy metal freak since I was in 7th grade, and horror just seems the way to go to me. I will say this though. Somebody recently asked me. They said that in most horror movies, it gets to a point where it gets funny, like haha. And The Evil Dead is like that. It's so violent that it gets ridiculous.
I know.
And one thing that I've got to admit to you openly, none of my novels are funny. None of my short stories are funny. I don't have that in me, but I'm going to guarantee you this, they will surprise you. And they will please you on the dark side. That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely, Mike. Absolutely. And as novel writer, how do you start writing a novel, and what are the things? And do you go to some specific places to get some inspiration to write your novels? And what are the certain criteria that is required when you start writing a novel?
Yeah, no problem. I don't listen to anything when I'm writing. It's got to be quiet. It's got to be silent. And when it comes to this gets back to the idea of outlining versus discovery writing. Chet Williamson is a friend of mine. He wrote Psycho 2. He's a famous horror writer about a generation before me. And he believes, like Richard Matheson says, that you have to know the last line of the last chapter of your novel before you start. And I can't write that way, man. Usually the way I write, if it's a short story, I usually know the whole story before I start. A novel, I usually get a vision of something, and I make the novel lead up to it. And discovery writing is cool because I don't know what I'm going to do 5 days from now. I usually like to know what chapter I'm going to do next in my head. But a lot of the times I don't know if the novel's going to come to fruition. And when I finally know what the ending is, it's like a great celebration. I did it. But talking about inspiration, let me tell you how I wrote my first novel. And I'll gift you the electronic book. And there's an app where you can put it on a phone or any device. My first novel is called Alice Walks. I wrote it in 2012. It came out in its first version in 2013. And it was my first novel. I had no idea how to start. And I was fascinated with the legend of Bloody Mary. And I didn't know much about it. I thought, is there really a story here? And I looked it up online, and there isn't much of a story. If you go in front of a mirror and say Bloody Mary 3 times, a bloody lady comes up behind you and throws her baby at you, which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But I thought, maybe I could do something sort of like that. And in my mind, all of a sudden I saw in the suburbs, November, first snowfall, and the snow's falling down. And we're in a graveyard. And there's a 14-year-old girl who died drowning, and she's in a green burial dress floating on the air in front of her mausoleum. And then all of a sudden, somebody is throwing rocks at her. And even though she's a ghost, they pierce her and she bleeds like Jesus. So I have this whole thing. I have no idea what the story is. I just have this vision. Now, my son, his name is Max, he was 13, and he was having a sleepover. And his friends Nick and Will were over. And you can't really see. I live in a twin, small house. And my den is right next to the bathroom over here. Yeah. And then there's my room, and Max's room is right next door over here. So when I start thinking and writing, I get zoned out. I don't know what's going on anywhere else. All of a sudden, he's right up in my ear. Dad! And I'm like, what? He scared me because I'm thinking about a girl floating in her burial dress. And he goes, Dad, I need some Red Bull. And I go, what do you need fucking Red Bull for? And he says, Nick and Will are here. Whenever we have a sleepover, the first person that falls asleep gets oatmeal in his shorts. And I was like, I have my rock throwers. I know exactly where this is going to go. So right then, I named Max Mike, because that's my name. And Mikey is 13 years old. And on the first night of November snow, him and his friends Nick and Will all call each other's parents saying they're going to be at the other one's house. And Mikey's dad is a gravedigger in the graveyard. Mm-hmm. So Mikey takes the keys, goes out with his friends, sneaks into the tool shed in the graveyard to tell ghost stories. And Mikey has the inside information that they're airing out a corpse because it's not deteriorating fast enough. That actually happens. And she's in a mausoleum all the way at the south end of the graveyard. And he makes up a story about her. They go down, they're all high, and they go down to look at the body. And the spirit of that body, Alice Arthur is her name, falls in love with Mikey, and she stalks him. And that's how I got the novel.
Awesome, Mike, awesome.
Thank you for letting me tell that story. You're a very patient listener.
Thank you for sharing, Mike. Thank you for sharing. And Mike, what would you like to tell to the new writers who really want to get into novel writing? Do you have any message for them and any advice to give to them?
Absolutely. Stick to your vision. Don't adjust your vision to fit what you think is in the mainstream. Do your thing and do it well. And if it takes on, it takes on. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Think about a rapper. If you try to use the lingo that's in vogue now, in 3 years, by the time you make it to the stage, those words are obsolete, man. You can't look. Money is hard to come by in art. Most great artists and great writers, they were educators or journalists, or they did something else for a living. You do this out of love. Don't do it for the money. Don't even think about the money. Think about your vision and write what the fuck you want to write. And if it doesn't take off anywhere else, at least you know you had something pure and that you had something true. And to tell you the truth, that's the best kind of fiction. I've read stuff by people who are trying to follow a trend, or they're trying to be politically correct, or they're trying to verbalize the sensibilities of whatever trend is going on, and they sound farty and fucking girly. Don't do it. Do your own vision. Do it metal style. Let me tell you something. Nobody plays heavy metal because they're conforming. Because heavy metal has never fucking been popular. Never. I remember when Led Zeppelin was huge in the 70s, and all these people were winning awards, and you're like, who the fuck are they? Nobody listens to that shit. Look, do your thing. Do it metal. Do it from your heart, and show your darkness, show your passion, show your beauty. And your beauty is in the truth. Look, in verbal language, in politics, in society, everything is a fucking lie. Everything is a spin. Everything has its agenda. One of the only things we have that's fucking true anymore is like Metalhead's Forever magazine. I mean, a lot of people that write for that magazine do it volunteer because they do it out of love. Don't do it for a paycheck, man. There's a woman named Caitlin Kiernan who's kind of the top of my part of the industry. Like right now, I'm headlining the Smalls. I have my collection out by Cemetery Dance. I got a novel out by Nightshade. I'm doing pretty good. She is at the top of that food chain. And she publishes some of her commercial stuff with Penguin and some of her edgier stuff with Subterranean, which is another magazine like the ones I work with, like Cemetery Dance and Nightshade. And she had a saying that meant something to me. And I don't quite know what it means, but I do know what it means. She said, thinking that you're going to make your living off your art is like fucking your pet duck-billed platypus. And I know exactly what she means. It's like fucking your pooch. Like, you do art out of love. We work out of love for the family so we can make money.
Yeah.
But your art has to be out of love. Keith, that's why you run the magazine, man.
Sure.
It's out of love. Now, look, if the thing takes off and you get sponsors and you get advertising, and all the stuff that I don't fucking understand, that's really cool. But somebody asked me really recently, like, where is your love? Where's your passion? And I'm in an incredibly great position that what makes me money, being a professor, is just as thrilling to me nowadays as writing horror fiction. In fact, they go together. I mean, think about it for a minute. I'm an adjunct professor, so I'm technically part-time. I work at 3 universities. I make a good living. I'm okay. But I teach the equivalent of Comp 101. Learning to write research papers. So I do all the neoclassical macrostructures that bore the fuck out of everybody, like compare, contrast, and classification and division, right? And analysis and synthesis and blah, blah, blah. But most English classes, if you go above 101, they're all literature based. It's the only rhetoric class people take. So I have 18, 19-year-old students, some older, but mostly those who they only have one shot at this. And I'm the guy, I'm the gatekeeper. I'm the one to teach them how to do the research properly, how to write clearly, how to write an analysis like I do for you, Keith. I tell my students all the time, I write for Metalhead's Forever. I'm writing a fortification analysis. I'm saying yes to a band and I break it down to its bits and pieces. I teach that in college, man. And if I can be a little part of that, that gives me satisfaction too. So it's kind of both. I got lucky, man. I found something that I can do that puts bread on the table, and I can also write fiction. And look, I'm going to be honest about it. I haven't made enough writing fiction to retire on. No way. I mean, I got student loans, I got debt. For me to do that, I got to be a millionaire. But I will tell you this, if you added up all my royalties and advances from the small market where I've published,
Mhm.
I can buy beer and pizza for 10 years. You know what I mean? I can stock my winter filled with fun. And that's really all. I never cared about the money when it came to stuff like this. I never did. In fact, I've never taken money from rockers ever. I've never written an article about a rocker, and I've written a lot. I've written about 150. I've never asked for money. I have to admit, and I'm not saying that I'm a prostitute, but I will admit that I wrote so many articles on Eclipse bands. They're the boutique deathcore label out of Butler, New Jersey.
Mhm.
I've written about 50 articles on just Eclipse bands. And I got to be friends with the owner. His name is Chris Poland. He's a really cool guy, man. And he asked if he could pay me. That I never asked for it. I swear. I'm no angel, believe me. I'm a fucking asshole, but I never asked for it. But he said, I'll pay you a little bit when I have a new signing. If you'll Zoom with them, get the information that they want in there about their bio, and write a little bit of a review to pump up the album. And I've done 4 of those. And it's the first time I ever got paid for doing anything with music. And I refuse. And Keith, you're going to relate to this. I refuse to put that money in the bank because then it's going to end up paying for like some bill. Here, it's right here. I put it right here, the Eclipse money. And what I do is, now that we're allowed to go out to restaurants and stuff, I use that to take my wife and my son out to dinner, because that's fun money, man.
Yeah.
You know, Keith, look, I don't know if you realize it, but I'm a happy guy. I'm living the dream. Look, if you ask me what my dream is, F. Night Shyamalan, or whatever his fucking name is, he picks up the Sculptor from bargain bin somewhere and wants to do the movie of it. That would be a dream come true for me. But I've already achieved everything else. I'm already writing for a great rock magazine, Metalheads Forever. I'm already teaching college. I'm publishing novels and short stories. I couldn't ask for anything more. Like, this Zoom meeting is special to me, Keith. I mean, you decide you're going to spend an hour and a half with me. I'm boring, man. Look at me, right? I mean, you decided to spend some time with me. That means a lot to me. I'll never forget it, Keith. Thanks, man.
It's my pleasure, Mike, to have you on Metalheads Forever magazine. It's my pleasure. And talking about, I know you are a hardcore horror writer, but in the future, since you're so much associated with metal and rock, if you want to write a biography for a particular artist or a band, what would that band be or an artist would be?
That band would be Sifting out of Los Angeles, California, and I would write that in a heartbeat. I'll be their ghostwriter in a heartbeat. Bring me on tour. I'll take a year off. I'll tour with them. I'll get all of their thoughts, and I'll write that book in a heartbeat. Yeah, Sifting, the progressive metal band, Eclipse Records, out of Los Angeles. That would be my dream right there.
Wonderful, wonderful, Mike. And Mike, would you like to share some of the great moments that you had over the years?
Excuse me. Wow. Yeah, man. Okay. All right. It's going to sound super fucking nerdy. When I was in 7th grade, I was in middle school for the first time. I was all alone. You know, it was crazy. And I auditioned for the school play, which was Oliver. And I got chosen as Oliver. And I got standing ovations all nights we played. And I was popular. I know what it's like to be popular. I was popular in my middle school for 3 weeks. And then everybody fucking forgot about me like normal. But there are more. Let me hold on now. Playing my first gig with Louis was in my senior year, a battle of the bands, Upper Darby High School. Jeff LaBar was not in this one. He was too young. Played in front of 3,000 people. We came in third, and Louis played Eruption for those people, and they fucking flipped. And that moment was great. I played in front of 3,000 people and succeeded. The next one, I would have to say 1987. The last gig, my band that played original music, that tried to make it, we played the Empire Rock Club a night after Bon Jovi played, and a night before Skid Row played. So that shows you how good this club was. We played a Saturday night. We opened for Metal Wolf, who had an album out, and Lynn Kratz, a DJ from WMMR, big rock station in Philly, introduced us, and we killed it. Best we could possibly be. Getting married to my wife in 1989, having my kid in 1996, teaching my first college class in around 2010, writing for Metalheads Forever, my first real gig writing for, a rock magazine. And then we just come to present. I have to include in there that, you have to say meeting S.T. Joshi, because he's been way more than helpful. One thing I didn't tell you, I'm not good at ending novels. I usually end them too quickly. And for Phantom Effect and The Witch of the Wood, my second and third novels, ST looked at the draft and literally told me that I was cheating, and that I didn't have enough of a battle between the protagonist and antagonist. And in both novels, I added about 60 pages, which took about 2 months each. And he's the shining light. I think, if I had to name what the one big thing that I've gained from all this, it's a mentor for my writing, who understands my writing. He knows exactly what I'm trying for. Because, Keith, when you write horror, a lot of people just say, well, I don't like horror, so they're not going to be a good critic. Or they're going to say, your killer, Michael Myers, killed a dog. Why do you hate dogs? Yeah, that kind of thing. And ST understands what I'm looking to do better than anybody. Almost like he can see inside my brain. And his advice is always stellar. So those are like the high points. Let me ask you, man, let me throw that back to you. What are your highlights?
My highlights, starting my career with Metalheads Forever magazine. That will be the biggest ever thing. And one more thing I have to say is I was with this organization or a congregation called the Society of Mary. You probably might have heard of them. The Marianists, they are very huge in the United States. They run a lot of universities in the United States. They run the Dayton University in Dayton, Ohio. They have St. Mary's University in Texas. So I was part of them. At the age of 19, 20, I wanted to become a priest.
Wow. You know what? That's kind of cool, because I like talking to you. I feel like I'm giving confession. You know what I mean?
But not a priest. Now, I wanted to become a priest, so I joined this organization called the Society of Mary. So I was with them for a year and a half with them. So then I realized that's not the place where I was supposed to be, because although I have a belief in God, but this too much of spirituality and the inner things didn't work out well for me. So I had to come out of this thing. But I met a lot of real good people out there, people from the United States. So they are really nice. They taught me a lot, especially There's one person called James Fitzgibbons. So he's no more. He's passed. So he's not alive anymore. But he's one of the mentors. He taught me how to play basketball.
I've tried learning that sport. It's hard.
And he was the first person who forced me to read the Hardy Boys. So I became a Hardy Boys fan because of it. So he made me to do that. So these are some of the highlights that was huge in my life. And I cannot say that anything about my life because I'm not married man. I'm a single person for life. So there is no special things in part of life. So these are the major things I would say, Mike. Yeah.
How cool, man. Thank you for sharing that with me. That's awesome, man. Yeah, this interview was good, man. Thank you for bringing me on. I mean, like I'm an early riser. Like I get up at 4:30 in the morning, and before I even wake my family up, I usually have written a lot.
Yeah.
So usually many nights when I'm working the next day, I'm asleep by 8 o'clock. You got me on a late night, man. This is awesome.
Oh, I'm sorry about it. I'm sorry.
No, man, I'm enjoying myself. And by the way, there's something about my camera that makes my face look really red. I'm not this red. Like I'm okay. I'm not having a heart attack. I'm good. Right? It's just me face.
That's totally fine, Mike. Do not worry about it. It's all good. And Mike, finally, what would you like to say to your hardcore fans around the world who's reading your novels and who's reading your articles?
Oh yeah, man. Well, first of all, I want to tell you that thank you for reading Metalheads Forever, because it's a magazine of purity. The articles are honest, and it keeps you up on who's doing creative, heavy music. The stuff I write is what I write. I write about all kinds of artists. I have my column there called Goblet of Shock. But I think that the mission of the magazine is important. And what Keith is doing is important. I think you should support it as best you can. If you buy one of my books, get in touch with Keith and he'll give you my email. I would love to talk to you about the stories that I write. And if you do happen to pick up a book, thank you. You make my life worth living, man. That's all I got to say.
Awesome, Mike. And Mike, thank you so much for giving me your time, especially this night. I took your sleep away. I'm sorry about that, but thanks again. But thanks again for this opportunity. It's a real pleasure talking to you. And thanks for the recent release, Dancing with the Tombstone, and for the looking forward to the upcoming release, The Sculptor, in January 22nd, 2022. So we're looking forward to it. And thanks again, Mike, for this opportunity. It's a real pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Keith. What a wonderful interview. Thank you for having me on, man. And it was great meeting you.
It's a real pleasure meeting you. Even though we know for years, this is the first time we are having a face-to-face meeting here.
and I treasure it. Thank you, Keith. You're awesome.
Thank you. And you have a good night, Mike. Take care of yourself.
You got it.
Bye-bye.